So, if you had to give your perspective on like what are the key things that a parent should know in order to make a decision, whether to bring a child to the ER. Maybe we could review a few cases, or like how would you build a sort of guideline for this?
Right. So that's a very relevant question and an important question, and we do have existing guidelines at various stages in the health system. So, for example, in the UK, the general practitioners have guidelines on what to do if a child with a fever comes to the GP's office, and it's based on a traffic light system. If it is green, then the child could go home. If it's yellow versus red would refer to the emergency room, and then yellow or amber would, is an in-between area. So it's very possible to create, just in broad brush strokes, something similar for parents to approach health issues at home. For example, if your child has a fever, that's not saying that you should panic, because a fever is actually a very natural phenomenon. It's a signal. It's just like an alarm light going off in your car. A fever means that something's going on. That's all it means. Fever by itself is almost never a bad thing. It's almost never. And so if your child has a fever, then the key question becomes, well, where could the fever be coming from? And what else is going on in the background? And I truly believe there should be a paradigm shift from trying to control the fever to get away from that and to see, well, where could the fever be coming from? And are there any red flags behind the scenes that we should look out for? There's a lot of evidence to suggest that in most situations, treating the fever is not something we should do. We should just let the fever run. There are exceptions. If the fever is extremely high to 41 degrees, which is 104, 105 Fahrenheit, there may be some benefits to tepid sponging and methods like that. But for the most part, when a fever runs between 38, 39 degrees Celsius, which is anywhere in the range of 101 to 103 Fahrenheit, that is not a reason to panic just based on the fever alone. So this is, I think, a good starting point for us to figure out what we should look for when our child has a fever.
And what about, so what are the warning signs? Like, what would you say, like if you had to pinpoint the signs to really look out for?
Right. So I think I'll approach it a slightly different way. I can share with you all the good things. So if you have a fever and you have these things, then there's not much to worry about. Scientifically, this is looking at a negative predictive value. So if the answer is no to these, your child is probably fine at home. If the answer is yes to any of these, it doesn't automatically mean that there's an emergency, but that means it's no longer no. So yes maybe is still okay, but yes also maybe, look, you need to go to the hospital. So approaching it from items that carry what the statisticians call a high negative predictive value, which means if it's negative to all of these, then you're pretty confident that you're on target. So if your child with a fever is still behaving normally in terms of activity, in terms of their favorite toy, they show interest in it, they fight with their siblings, which is completely normal. So if you have a fever and usual behavior, that's very good. Okay? Sometimes when the fever comes on, a child may feel a bit lethargic. That just may be because of the fever, or it may be because there's something serious underneath. So that's where the maybe comes in. But if your child's activity level is normal or near normal, that's great. If your baby is able to drink liquids, and if it's a very young child, is able to make wet diapers, or if it's an older child, is able to pee. Generally with an older child, you pee 3 times a day, and that's considered enough. And for little babies, there are weight-based frequencies that we fall back on to see if a baby is X number of kilograms, then how much urine should be coming out. So if your child is drinking liquids, peeing, and has a normal activity level, already you are really in a safe situation, no matter how high the fever is. So I don't put a lot of emphasis on eating solid food when you're sick, because all of us lose our appetite when we're sick. But the key is liquids. So you have normal activity, you're able to take liquids, and you pee. You are in a very good place. Now things could change, things could evolve, so that's why we must continue to keep an eye on things. But I think this is a very good set of things to look for. The other important thing is if your child is what we call arousable. So if a child is napping, you can easily wake up the child. He or she may smile, that's great, and may respond appropriately. But if it's getting more and more difficult to arouse the child, or there's not a lot of smiling but a lot of leave me alone, a lot of withdrawal, then that falls into the maybe okay, maybe not okay category. So I think these are very useful things. So if we summarize what we want to see in our kids, we want to see a almost normal activity level. So when my kids are sick but naughty, I'm very happy. That's the normal behavior. If they're able to take liquids and hold it down and make urine, that's great. And if they are arousable and alert, or even if they're sleeping, if they can easily wake up, and especially if they can smile at something funny, that's amazing. So when we don't see those things, that's when we should begin to think, okay, there may be something else going on.